Good morning, guys. Here I am. Just want to give you a little bit of a video about making a good survey for those of you who would prefer to hear it rather than read it. So first, you need to click on this website right here. You go here, and that's going to take you to a link on how to use Google Forms. It's a video, so you can use that video for checking out how to use Google Form itself. The rest of this is mostly instruction on how to make a good survey. So here are some tips for a good survey. First, you need to think about the purpose of your survey. You need to know that before you start. You need to have a goal for that survey. Why are you creating it? What information do you want to have when you receive all the surveys? How are you going to use the data that you're collecting? If you need to make charts and things, then the kinds of questions you're going to ask have to have close-ended answers as opposed to open-ended answers where people are writing in text. So the other thing it says in here is, what decisions do you hope to impact with the results of this survey? So it's very important that you know the purpose of your survey and that you remind yourself of that after you make your questions, and make sure that you're asking questions that help with that. The next thing is, it's really important to keep the survey short, to keep it on task. So don't ask questions that aren't related to what your goal is. Sometimes people will get frustrated if there are too many questions or silly questions on a survey. So you have to make sure that you're thinking about these ahead of time. Again, it's better to keep the questions closed if possible if you're wanting to use the data, especially to make graphs or pie charts or something like that. If the questions are closed, then your data is easier to read and to summarize. Now, you might also be using a rating scale system. So you might say, is this the best or the worst? Do you really like it or you really dislike it? If you're using things like this, you need to stay consistent. So if you say like the bad stuff is 10 and the great stuff is 1, you have to do that for every one of your questions. You can't change that around, because people will get confused and they will answer your questions incorrectly, and then that will mess up your data a little bit. Try to keep the wording of your questions simple. If you go right here, you're going to see some suggestions of the kinds of questions you can ask. Now, once you've got all your questions down, you need to go through and reorder them and make sure that you're asking them in a logical order. Okay, the next thing is to test your survey. So test that survey, try it with a friend or ask a teacher to look at it first to give you feedback. Something else that I read about that I thought I would share with you is to think about your audience and send the survey at the beginning or the end of the day. These are times when people are either starting their day and checking their email, or finishing off for the day and relaxing at night, and they're a little more interested in taking a survey. Another thing you really need to do is include some kind of greeting or message in your survey. You can put the title, and then underneath title in Google Forms it says description, and you can put a little greeting in there, something like you see here where it says, "Dear students, thank you so much for taking our survey. We're a group of grade 5 students studying carpooling for grade 5 final exhibition. We want to survey students to see how they get to and from school. We really appreciate you taking the time to fill in our survey." Particularly teachers, when you're asking them, get very frustrated when you don't give them this kind of information. All right, so here's your assignment. Your assignment is to create a survey. If you've started in on exhibition and you have a reason to create a survey, you can use that reason, you can use that purpose for your survey, and I can be your practice person, and I will give you feedback on your survey. If you're not there yet and you just want to practice making a survey, you can create a survey about how to find out how people get to work every day. So create the survey on Google Form. Copy the link to that form. Make sure that you share it in the right way. Make it publishable to anyone with ASD links. Okay, copy the link to that form. So you go into send form, and then you copy the link to the form, and then you add that link to the badge on badge list. And there's a link to it right here. You're lucky. So make sure you use all these reminders to create your survey. Then, when you're done that, you also need to answer the questions on this Google form right here. Good luck.